Navy from 1972 to 1976, 78. And since then I've worked here in Central Florida. I've raised 2 daughters who are grown and have a total of 6 grandchildren. And I'm having fun in Fed Voices. The 4th of July. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey. Titusville was located just north of Trenton along the Delaware River. 4th of July was a very special day, not just for the community, but especially for our family. It rivaled Christmas. My father, all year long, was an auditor for the state of New Jersey, spending every day just with figures. But for the 4th of July, he was assigned being the person in charge of the fireworks display. And for that one day, he let his artistic talent show. Months before July, we started receiving catalogs in the mail. They didn't have many pictures, but plenty of graphics of what the stuff would look like. Fascinated as a child, I would ponder through the catalogs and make up my own imaginary displays. Our community display, though, consisted of a combination of ground pieces and aerial shells. Shell is the word for the item that was fired out of a vertical pipe in the ground. High in the air, it would explode with colored stars and other pyrotechnic effects. A couple of weeks before the 4th, my father would get a notice that the shipment had arrived at the Railway Express station. So we, my father, brother, and I, would remove the seats from our VW microbus and head out. There we loaded everything and of course came right back home. It was kind of a special excitement riding on crates filled with gunpowder and explosives, all that kind of little boy stuff. Back home, we put everything into the garage and we started sorting out the shells. They were grouped according to size and fanciness. Just as bullets come in various calibers, pyrotechnic shells have different sizes. They are measured by their circumference. A 9-inch shell, about 3 inches in diameter. The 12-inch shell is 4 inches. In our community display, we used 9s, 12s, 15s, and 18-inch shells. Fanciness was simply an empirical judgment by my father. The shells were divided into volleys, laid out on the floor so we could see how the whole display would go. We fired our shells one at a time. Everyone enjoyed the individual colors, the effects. The show lasted longer. Shells were repackaged into paper brown bags and numbered. It was there that I personally learned a lot about entertainment. My dad said that each volley of shells had to build to a crescendo, and then we'd have a ground piece and we could build again in the next volley. The morning of the 4th was always a busy day. My dad had a flatbed trailer and we hitched it up, and the first stop was behind the firehouse to pick up the assortment of mortars, the iron pipes placed in the ground to launch the shells. Next we went to the lumber supply to pick up 20-foot long 2x4s and cinder blocks. We then unloaded the 2x4s at the back of the elementary school playground. They were used to support the various ground pieces. Up on a hill behind the playground, we unloaded the mortars. We would return later. Last stop, we moved the trailer back to the school, to the front of the school, and set it up on blocks. In the afternoon, it would be the reviewing stand used during the parade. Going back up the hill, we returned to the mortars. We dug the trenches to secure them. The mortars were pipes 2 to 3 feet long with one end securely plugged. They needed to be set about a foot into the ground, plugged end down, and the dirt firmly packed in around them. 3 trenches were dug, Bank A, Bank B, and the bigger finale. During the display, my dad would alternate from Bank A, Bank B, and back and forth. The finale was an explosion of color and sound that signaled the end of the night's display. The shells for the finale had to be set up early. They were launched too fast to be lit one by one, and they were much too close together. Shells were loaded into the mortars, first some color, then a big explosion, some more color and explosions, and alternating like that to the end. The fuses from each shell were spliced together sequentially to go off about every half second or so. And then we placed a tarp over the finale to protect it to the evening. In the afternoon, the town assembled for the parade. The route was along the front of the school. First came the baby parade, then the brownies, the Cub Scouts, drum and bugle corps, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, a float from Vacation Bible School, fire and rescue volunteers, long parade. My dad always marched in either his scoutmaster's uniform or with the fire department volunteers. Later in the afternoon, boat races would be held on the river, but our family walked home for a meal and a much needed nap. At early dusk, we returned to the school playground, except my dad. He changed into his work clothes, dungarees, an old t-shirt, and the ball cap that he only wore for firework displays, his personal protection equipment. We picked a site for our blanket facing the rear of the playground, where all of the ground pieces had been set up. There was a rope preventing us from getting too close. The mayor presented the awards for the parade. There was a peanut scramble for the kids to get rid of all their built-up excitement. Perhaps there would be a band that would play until the dusk was dark enough. The welcome sign would be lit, and the crowd would settle down to watch as it burned out. The first round of aerial shells would come. The display continued, alternating between ground pieces and aerial shells. First the simple fountain arrangements on the ground, then the wheels, rats on wire, and ending with Niagara Falls. This piece simulated water falling with silver-colored fountains suspended from a rope. Because we set it up over the back fence, it became a tradition for it to burn off the weeds and vines that had grown there since last year. Up on the hill, my dad was very busy. One bag at a time, the shells would be loaded into a bank of mortars. Now, to fire a shell, you pulled off a little protective cover from the shell, touched your flare to the end of the fuse. You had a few seconds to retire promptly to a safe distance. Then the launching charge would explode and the shell would be shot up out of the mortar. As it traveled upward, an internal time delay fuse would fire the shell when it was sufficiently high enough. Oohs and ahs from the crowd. Then the fuse for the next shell would be lit. The ground crew knew the count of each volley and then lit the next ground piece. But this was no resting time for my father. All the mortars had to be cleaned out, pulling out any burning embers, pieces of paper with a pole, using a nail stuck through it. After Niagara Falls came the finale and the good night sign. Tarp was rolled off, the master fuse was lit, and a safe distance was established. Ground literally erupted as shell after shell blasted from the mortars into the sky. One year I was helping my dad load mortars, and the ground crew lit the good night sign too early. That was the first time I ever heard my father curse. After the show came the traditional traffic jam. Local police directed the traffic, volunteer firemen solicited donations, kids fell asleep in the car. We were lucky. We could walk home to our house. The next day was spent cleaning up. Mortars had to be dug up and returned to storage, lumber back to the lumberyard, trailer parked behind the house, waiting for next year.